Hello everybody and welcome back to Muramasa the Demon's Blade. This is Momohime Act 3. We've gotten a lot of interest in this LP. I'm really glad to see the positive response in the LP, and now that I'm actually doing new recordings, I need to summarize a lot of stuff that people have addressed. First off, I completely forgot the name of the person on the forums, and I apologize. But somebody did mention I never covered the gameplay mechanics of this game, so I'm gonna start this video off by doing that. Afterwards, I'm going to address a bunch of lore tidbits, and we'll see where that goes from there. So gameplay in this game works a bit strangely. For the most part, you're going to be running around, exploring areas in sort of a Metroidvania style, but not really. It's mainly just beat-em-up exploration, but the main meat of this game's gameplay is combat, and combat works as such. When you're in combat, your initial move is a 3-hit combo. It's just 3 strikes. And you just go from there. You also have 2 ground moves. Your first ground move is a sliding down slash. Now when I say sliding down slash, it's basically, for Momohime, it's kind of like a sweeping slash that goes into an uppercut. And it moves her forward, but it also pops the enemy in the air. Your other down move is the guard breaker, which I've shown several times before. It's a really good move specifically made for breaking guards, but it's also good for getting a lot of hits in. Now, during your 3-hit combo, at any time you could press up and do a launcher, and that's basically just your standard uppercut slash, and it launches people in the air. There's no real big mystery to that. From that uppercut, from any attack though, you could instantly go into an air dash. Now, in air dash, you have 3 air dashes, and you do it by holding the attack button and then pressing forward on the control stick. By doing an air dash, you get a free attack and you get moved up in the air a little bit, as we might see here. Also, here is our weapon for beating Chapter 2. This is Wasp Swarm. This is really the stupidest weapon, or stupidest special move in the game. It is so overpowered. But yeah, right there, that's Air Slash. Air Slash you could do up to 3 times. And by doing so, you can juggle people in the air because Air Slash also pops them in the air. Now the thing about Air Slash is, at the end of every Air Slash, you could do a air combo, which is another 3-hit combo in the air. Now I mentioned way back in either a Kisuke video or the latest Momohime video, but there is a busted combo that you could do with a combination of Air Slashes and air combos. Like right about there, you could see me kinda doing it. But yeah, if you know how to do this combo, and you juggle someone, you can bust this game wide open, and I try not to do that for the sake of entertainment. Now here's a longsword we got. It gives us Holy Blessing. We saw some of Kisuke's bosses do this, but by using Holy Blessing, you get a temporary, I want to say, damage boost and super armor frames, so you basically can't get staggered while using it. Now, one final thing on gameplay. When you finish an air combo, you do kind of a spin attack. It's not really anything big, but I feel like I should mention it just to summarize combat. But yeah, that's all of combat, and I hope I summarized everything that needs to be summarized. Because that's the real basics, nothing really impressive. But the main thing you need to take away from combat is that in combat, you can cancel into damn near any attack. As you've probably seen me do a lot throughout the LP, I have many times canceled 3-hit combos into either launcher uppercuts, sliding slashes, guard breaks, air dashes. There really is no limitation to what you can cancel into. So if you keep that in mind, combat gets very easy in this game. I say easy, but I kind of got exploded there, so that's kind of funny. Now on to comments. We've got a lot of YouTube and Something Awful comments discussing lore with the game, but before we continue that, here is a palanquin. This was a big form of transportation for noble-type folk like the shogunate back in Edo period of Japan. It's basically 2 dudes transporting you across the map. They are pretty much worthless in the normal playthrough, and in post-game, because What these guys are supposed to do is act as fast travel during your normal gameplay, but you never find them in a path you want to take. And in the post-game, when you would like to have fast travel, you just have a teleport. So those palanquin bearers are basically worthless. You could still use them, but they have no worth whatsoever. But yeah. Here we see a lot of combat being, well, here we actually see why Wasp Swarm is busted. If you mash the button out, you can break a samurai's guard. And that shit is broken as hell. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah. On lore discussion, we've got a lot of positive responses, so what I'm gonna do is, for each relevant episode, I'm gonna discuss pertinent tidbits to each character. So for Momohime, we have a couple comments from Fractal Sandwich. The one that was probably the most obvious, and is probably more noticeable if you consider this as a formerly Nintendo Wii game. Momohime's name is actually kind of a word pun, because translated, it could be translated out to Peach Princess. And if you've ever played video games ever, Peach Princess is kind of an obvious nod. I don't know if Vanillaware intended this when they were developing the game, but having Princess Peach as a Nintendo game kind of is a funny nod. Now, one thing I was not aware of, if you look way back in the beginning of the game, and you look at the title cards for Momohime and Kisuke in Character Select, the big icon that goes on their side icons, it actually, I forget how specifically it is, but it's a nod to a famous painting in Japan called Night of the 100 Demon Parade. Now, this specific bit of not lore, of culture is known far and wide throughout a lot of Japanese comics, cartoons, video games. It is a very famous painting of just a bunch of Japanese demons having a parade. But yeah, I did not realize that both Momohime and Kisuke's story titles were a pun for the 100 Demon Parade. And if I think about it, it could also be kind of relevant to something that happens in the endgame, but I'll discuss that when it comes. Now, username on Something Awful NGDBSS, that's a mouthful, discussed Wanyudo as a... He went into further detail discussing Wanyudo as a farrier of souls from the overworld to hell. He also made specific mention of how his death was a bit of poetic irony, because it was something about him being the spirit being fascinated with torture, and that's why he became a ferryman of souls. And more specifically, Wanyudo is in perpetual agony. I think that's the irony there, but since he was so fascinated with torture, he became a wheel on fire, which is just a forever dimension of hell. I don't know how to describe it. Now, other people, both on Essay and YouTube, too many to list in fact, also discussed the parallels of Wanyudo with other cultural icons. More specifically, some of the Greek gods that are also Flaming Wheel, but also the... I forget what kind of... It's a type of Christian culture, but I can't remember what religious fact it is, but angels originally, back before they were more normalized to be viewable, a lot of angel designs were very fucking weird, and one of the more famous ones was a wheel on fire covered with eyes. If you've ever played a Shin Megami Tensei game, they actually use that design a lot as well. And I thought that was a really cool nod in between cultures, that the flaming wheel seems to be a very prevalent icon. Now, both Something Awful user Ostrike and YouTube user Chaos Distortion Blade brought up the Karakasha as the umbrella swordsman. I covered a little bit before in the videos before, but the big thing to note about them is that they are actually sentient item spirits. Let me check real quick to see what they specifically said. Oh god, I can't remember what the item was. But basically, the gist of it is they are everyday Monday items that eventually became spirits in their own right. And that was the thing to take away from there. The interesting thing to note about that, though, is that in Muramasa, they're not typically depicted as they would in most other things, where it's just a umbrella with an eyeball and a giant fucking tongue, which is what you usually see in most things. If you ever look at, say, Yokai Watch 99 Spirits, which is a Steam game, and more notably to me, Pocky and Rocky, that's what you typically see. While in this game, they're just swordsmen hidden underneath umbrellas. I think Vanillaware did that specifically because having such a cartoony depiction of the thing would contrast really hard with the more detailed and egregiously exaggerated designs that they're known for. But yeah, Karakasha, umbrella spirits that are meant to be items, but in this game they're actually samurai. What do you know? Now, Akukiji on no, that's pronounced Akujiki. Sorry, I'm never gonna get names right. In the Something Awful thread, he posted a lot of stuff. For one, he confirmed the time era of this game as the Edo Tokugawa shogunate era of Japan, which is a famous warring states era of Japan's history. I believe if you want to go to a parallel for a more broad sense, if you've ever seen the anime Rurouni Kenshin, that anime is set just after that time period, so a little bit of interesting trivia for you. Akujiki also brought up the haiku I mentioned in Momohime Chapter 2, I believe? Where it was a fish jumping from a pond. That is apparently a very famous haiku. I think the first one made by a man named Matsuo Basho. And according to both the NHK, which is a big thing in Japan, a big company in Japan, along with other sources, that haiku was actually the most influential piece of literature in Japan. Why, I don't know, but yeah, there's that. Kind of makes sense that would be in this game, considering the era of the game and the theme of the game itself. So it makes a lot of sense. And one final big name thing that Akujiki mentioned is that at the end segment of Chapter 2, where it takes place in Yoshiwara, that is apparently the most famous red light district in Japan for the era, so that's a neat little nod. And now with all that out of the way, let's actually go to the level. Bringing things back to actual story, to summarize the situation at hand, last episode, Rankai was... sorry, I am trying to recollect things. Momohime Jinkuro actually cornered Rankai and was asking where the Dark Resurrection Blade was. I still don't remember the original name of that, I'll have to get it by next video, but Rankai basically said the man Jinkuro was trying to assassinate, who was Yagyuu Shinkage, still has the sword, and he was last seen in Segura, and that's where we're supposed to be headed right now. Basically, the situation is Jinkuro wants to put the boots to Yagyuu Shinkage and figure out where his old sword was. Because for whatever reason, Jinkuro cannot use his soul possession technique without the Dark Resurrection Sword, which is a plot line that will be discussed later in Momohime's story, but for now, we just know that he can't do it. So we have to go all the way to Suruga in order to confront Jinkuro. Now luckily this isn't really a big dungeon. We've spent a little over 13 minutes discussing lore and gameplay mechanics to the point where we covered most of half of the video, but this entire quote-unquote dungeon along with the boss fight and the plot discussion is going to take up the rest of the video. So it's not really a long one if you take a look at last week's episodes where they were 45 minutes. But yeah, we also have seen Yagyuu Shinkage before. If you were paying attention to Kisuke Act 2, we actually see Yagyuu at the end of the episode as Kisuke's former boss. But we're actually going to see him in... But if you just do what most people do in the game and just play one act first and then the other, this would be the first time you see Yagyuu Shinkage in Momohime's story, at least. However, going from Kisuke Act 2 to Momohime Act 3, we actually see a little bit more of Yagyuu Yukinojo's story than we realize. In Kisuke Act 2, we discover that Yagyuu Yukinojo is actually planning a coup on, I believe they actually reveal it as Momohime's family, but they discuss it as his sister. Shit, I can't remember his name, but we'll figure out her name in Act 3, in Kisuke Act 3. But yeah, a little bit of a story spoiler in that note. Yagyuu Yukinojo is actually one of the main reasons why Momohime got tied into this whole plot, mainly because at the time Momohime was dating Yagyuu Yukinojo, but back in Kisuke Act 2, it's also revealed that Yagyuu Yukinojo actually struck out at Momohime's family, while she didn't know about it. And with that in mind, we're actually near the end of the dungeon. We just got one more random encounter. It's kind of interesting how a lot of the encounters in this game are random. They're not specifically designed in mind, which is why you see generic things such as samurai, monks, and ninja. But an interesting thing to note, if you've been paying attention, we fought a lot of samurai in this specific chapter. And I think there's actually a gameplay reason for that when we actually see the boss of this dungeon. But yeah, we're already here. Now hopefully if I do things right, we actually get to see another big mechanic of this game. Cooking. So in the other chapters we've done roasting, but we've never actually done stews. Now, as I mentioned before, Vanillaware loves food porn, and in this game it actually has a mechanical interest. If you cook a meal beforehand that is a stewed pot, not only do you get a substantial HP heal and a huge amount of spirit, you also get a specific buff that lasts for quite a long time. The one I used, Cabbage Stew, gives you a plus 10 to strength for quite a long time. Now, while this is substantial damage-wise because 10 strength actually does transfer well to the gameplay sense, but if you want to cheat, in theory, you could actually wield weapons that you're not supposed to by cooking certain meals. Also, I'm actually cooking the whetstones here because this boss is notorious for breaking your weapons. So let's get into the plot of Momohime and Yagyuu. Oh my god, his name is Yukinojo. Wow, for those of you watching the video, you're probably laughing your ass off right now. His name is Yukinojo, or Yagyuu Yukinojo, so I was kind of right with his name. Shinkage is his art style. Sword art style, I should say. But yeah, this boss fight is the very famously stereotypical samurai duel on the beach. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, Kimuragui actually brought up something specific to both Jinkuro and Momohime. Their spirit form is actually known as a Hitodama, which is basically the spirit form of a human. Which is funny because in an old dead LP I kinda abandoned because I didn't know what to do with it. In Legend of Mana, one of the bosses of that game is called Hitodama. But yeah, the boss fight for this game is, I'm gonna get the name right this time, Yagyuu Yukinojo. Also, if you're wondering why I was looking at Yagyu's feet, it's hard to notice, but he has two different colored socks. And I just noticed that during recording, so I was really perplexed by that. It's not really a distinct thing, but one of his socks is distinctly more green than the other. And it's not influenced by shading either. So if you've ever seen any of my old LPs or streams or any of my old gameplay discussion videos, you'll know for a fact that I love equal battles. Like, sure, monster slaying's great and all, but when you have a one-on-one fight with a person that's basically you, I personally find that to be my shit. And I've yet to see any game that does it wrong. This game does it really fucking good. But yeah, they're giving us a little bit of a framing device for future levels. And yep, you are fighting Yagyuu Yukinojo, who is basically a more powerful samurai, but he also has sword techniques. So the big thing about this is, as I mentioned before, we fought a lot of samurai in this chapter, and it's actually really relevant, because Yukinojo, in terms of gameplay data, is basically an overglorified samurai. So if you know how to fight a samurai, you can beat Yukinojo relatively easily. The gist of it, however, is that, like you, he has sword arts, but he doesn't use them until the second half of the fight. So the big thing you want to do is make sure he never has a sword. Because if he has a sword, you're going to have a hard time because he guards all your attacks and he does a lot more damage. But yeah, this is probably the coolest fight in my opinion. It's just a one-on-one samurai fight framed on a beach, and the dude is actually as powerful as you. And while it looks like I'm kind of making a fool of him, he actually does have a lot of techniques that are really threatening. And when you're first playing the game, he can actually mess you up really hard. I don't know if you noticed it before, but he's done 2 techniques so far. He's done he's done Twin Lightning, which is basically 2 stabs with the lightning element. And he's done a Crescent Slash that is meant to do weapon damage more than actual damage. Now, while they seem benign now, once he goes into his second phase, they become a lot more threatening. And I'm trying really hard to break his sword, because I do not want him to have a sword. Yeah, if you saw right there, he's done 70 and 90 damage, which is a good 1/5 of my HP bar. Meanwhile, when he doesn't have a sword, he only does like 10 to 20 damage. And I have gotten beat up a lot. I didn't even realize my HP was that bad. Holy crap. Even with a broken sword, Yukinojo is a big threat. Which is why you want to, first and foremost, destroy his sword. Now, Swordbreaker is normally the go-to thing to do here, but if you just wail on him, his sword will eventually break. And I will admit, Swordbreaker is actually a huge risk in this fight. Now, here's his second phase, where he goes into superpowered mode. And I actually dropped the ball in some parts here, because he has a few tricks up his sleeve. Because as I mentioned before, when he gets into phase 2, he gets new techniques. And one of them he's about to bust out real soon. Right here, this move! The Crescent Slash gets fucking huge. If it hits you, it's not much, but odds are you'll be pressing your attack button. And this game has a sort of auto-detect based on what you're doing at the time. So if you're attacking or doing an air dash, you're counted as guarding as well. So that Crescent Slash, if you're doing anything, will automatically break your sword 100% of the time. He also has one of our other techniques, the Uppercut Geyser that we used in Chapter 1. See right there, the Crescent Slash actually didn't do a lot of damage to me. But when it hits a sword, it just outright breaks it. I don't know if he has an upgrade to Twin Lightning, but we never see it here, and I don't think I've ever seen it ever from him. Because in Phase 2, he loves the upgraded Slash. And that is the thing that will more than often... There goes my sword. Yeah, Crescent Slash is the thing that will more than often get people, because for a technique, it is really big. It is one of the few techniques that requires you to double jump and air dash to get above it. But yeah, Yagyuu Shinkage is down. Or, Yagyuu Yukinojo. I'll never get his name right. For that, we get the Sword of Blackened Souls.
こやつ天品がありよる。殺すには惜しいが、生かしておいても後日のあだとなろう。お待ちください。
Something that kind of bugs me about this game is that some things have animations and some things don't. Like, Momohime's soul coming in doesn't have an animation, but one thing she's about to do here does, and it's really confusing. I'm also genuinely curious if Yukinojo can see Momohime's soul. But yeah, it's a little weird that that little bit right there has an animation, yet Momohime moving doesn't. But yeah, Momohime stood up for herself. Go girl. It's also interesting to note that whoever has the soul of or whoever is in possession of Momohime's body determines her outfit. Like when Jinkuro has Momohime's body, she doesn't have sleeves anymore, but she has armor everywhere. I don't know if that has to do specifically with anything in mythology, or is that just a kind of gameplay convenience. Now, I spoiled it before, but if you straight up play Momohime's arc without going into Kisuke's arc, this is where you learn that Yukinojo actually attacked Momohime's entire family under a farce. I shouldn't have said it ahead of time, but whoops. Yeah, the big plot is that Yukinojo is looking for a specific item in Momohime's family. Originally, he was supposed to marry Momohime's sister, but it got turned down, so instead he engaged to Momohime. And yeah, the marriage was entirely a precedence to get inside their district and attack them for their item. And because of that, Momohime's entire family is dead. Now, I don't know if Yukinojo is actually earnest here, because in the last chapter, he proved that he was more of a cunning individual and isn't above using people for his own ends. So I don't know if he's actually earnestly guilty about Momohime or not. Also, we kind of see here how shallow Kongiku is. Momohime, or not Momohime, Kongiku does everything to the will of Jinkuro. And we'll see that a little bit more later in her story, which is hilarious in my opinion. Also, I don't know if they mention it here, but this house that they're in is actually a fox magic illusion. I forget what it's called specifically, and they do mention it outright in Kisuke's arc. But yeah, just a neat little thing that they bring up here. So I hope you all liked Momohime, because that's the last we're gonna see of her for about 4 to 5 chapters? For whatever reason, she takes a backseat to the story up until the end. Actually, no. It's only 2 chapters because at one point she actually does have a pivotal plot segment. But she doesn't do as much as she does early on. So yeah, that was a really good boss fight. I loved it a lot. Like, this is one of those fights that made me think, yeah, this game is alright. Now, the Sword of Blackened Souls is a longsword, unfortunately, but it does open up future opportunities that I can't wield. Unfortunate, really. Though there was a sword that I could have crafted and probably would have been better in the fight with Yukinojo, but I didn't notice it until now. But yeah, we'll see you next time with Kisuke Act 3.